Hello. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to jump in on here and talk a little bit about my experience with COVID. I know some of you figured it out by my post what was going on, and some of you are hearing this for the very first time. So, this is actually going to be my first podcast and video about the whole experience. First of all, I want to say for all of you guys that were praying for me, sending me love, and just I don't know, giving me positive vibes. I want to vibes. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I know that um that vibration went a long way. Second of all, the one thing I want to talk about is pretty much my experience from start to finish. The very important thing that I do want to say is that, everyone's body, I'm not here an advocate for or not vaccine. I'm not here for that. I'm not here for politics. I'm not here for your health beliefs, my health beliefs, none of that. I'm just here talking about my experience and how it affected me. I had a fever for 13 days. And let me tell you, to have a fever for that long can really play tricks on your mind. Um, for a lot of people, I hear it's just like facing death for the ones that end up in the ER and or at home and just contemplating like all these scary thoughts because a lot of people have lost their lives, including my dad. For me, because I've faced death a number of times already with cancer and a couple other things. I guess the actual buildup of fear towards death wasn't there, but for me, it was more psychological of like, I just want this to end. And like, who knows what like I want this to end meant. And it could have meant like 5,000 things because at that moment, I was just like missing my dad, who I lost a year ago, missing my sister, who I lost 6 years ago. And so, like, psychologically, I started to break, like, in a very bad way, because I'm like, this is not going to end. Like, I just want this to end. And, like, if you ask me, like, what want this to end meant, it could have meant like so many different things that I'm probably not very proud of, but it just broke me in ways that I can never explain to anyone. Um, it was probably physically harder than a lot of times when I came home from chemo, but I'm probably exaggerating that too because honestly, when I've done chemo, I can remember coming back and being injected with that red, horrible chemo that I was like, okay, I just got injected with death. Like I'm dying right now, So um, but I've had a lot of nights where I was facing my death. And so, like, if you ask me, like, the fear of death, is it there? No. Like, I think it's a beautiful thing to transition. I'm not suicidal, of course, but I'm saying I'm not afraid of it. My beliefs are that energy always exists. And, like, hey, um, I had to face it during cancer. And so because I'm okay with it doesn't mean that I have a negative opinion about transition. It just means that I find it a very beautiful process in the human condition that, yeah, you do say goodbye to the ones you love. And it's hard. I'm going off topic here, but it's hard. But it actually had me face my feelings about losing my dad, losing my sister, in ways that I never imagined. Like, I know I miss them. I know I love them. And so I think what happened with the COVID experience, excuse me, I have that tickle cough still. What I have learned from that experience was that I miss them so much. And so, like, I was crying and releasing so many emotions that I didn't even know were there, where it was a cry of, like, I just want to be with you, you know? And so there's like this moment in my mind where I can just say, like, I physically could just give up right now. And like, I was like, finished, like physically, then like done. I'm like, I can't do this any longer. And what it was the fever just breaking me down. And it felt like it was breaking me down, like every wall that I built up emotionally against releasing these emotions for my dad, for my sister. This virus was like, no, I'm not letting you go. We have emotions that we need to release right now. And you're going to cry. You're going to sob. You're going to be in misery. This needs to go. And so like, I don't know if any of you have done plant medicine or ayahuasca. Like for me, COVID was seriously the same. Like when I did ayahuasca, it like ravagely like shook my body. I mean, I couldn't eat for like 7 days. I vomited for over 12 hours. Like physically, it was brutal. And that was like half a dose of everyone else. So ayahuasca, like when she was done with her lessons, she did leave my body. And so with COVID, once she felt like a feminine energy, that's just what it felt like to me. So she left my body when my lessons were complete, and they were all surrounded around the loss of my dad and the loss of my sister. It was a reminder every single day. It was like, going for them, like just wanting to hold them and just releasing and sobbing and releasing and sobbing. And so physically, I was so broken down that I had no choice but to release the ego and to let those emotions come out. And those emotions said one thing, that, wow, that's what I call when you have a noise or sound, not a noise, but a sound, a beautiful sound that comes in and accentuates what you're about to say. So here we go. It was basically reminding me that it's okay to feel, that I did put up walls around my heart. And so COVID told me it was time to let go. And until I did not completely let go and surrender, it didn't leave. And so once I surrendered and I let go, so to speak, of the walls, and I'm sure, processing death and processing the loss of a loved one it's a multi-layer experience. But for me, there was tons of layers that had to be released in order to get to where I'm at now. Physically, I'm much better now. The fever is gone. I'm slowly rebuilding. I'm not being fooled by like, oh, I'm done with COVID. I'm great. I'm running marathons or running around crazy town. I'm being very gentle and loving with my body. But most importantly now, I'm being gentle and loving with my emotions, and I'm being loving towards me. I'm also accepting. A friend of mine said something very important, said that you need to accept love from others when they're giving you love. And so that's something I've been implementing as well, is that when people are sending me love, I'm accepting it. I'm open with open arms because I had a wall against it. Okay. And that wall was part of this make believe life that I was living around the loss of my dad. Okay. Like, let me tell you, going into a spiritual journey like I have has really helped me with processing the loss of my dad. Okay. But it's also hurt me a lot, because it hurt me in the way that I had to understand, oh, my dad transitioned. My dad is in a beautiful, amazing space right now. Okay, what about the human experience where I'm devastated and I just want to scream and I just want to cry and I want to physically go through the emotions? Like, being positive and understanding can really circumvent a lot of your process of being human and letting go of those emotions. And that's exactly what happened to me. I thought I learned from the loss of my sister that being positive can really cut your grieving process short. And it did, to an extent of like, yeah, my heart and my mind were in the same spot. And I understand what transition is. So I was in complete coherence all the way through of like, hey, this is what happens when somebody leaves this space that you know as a 3D reality. Okay. But we all know that energy never ends. It's always forever. It's continuing on and on and on. But what about me The experience that I had with my dad now, what does that mean for me? What I wanted? Okay. Well, how did I process that? COVID went in to those walls and just tore them down and said, no, okay, like you're physically broken. You can't run anymore. I had no choice. I was in bed for like 15 hours a day. Like, where was I going to go? I had no other choice but to like cry and just want this over. I was physically done, but this was a very sweet spot for me because I was able to get into those parts of my heart within those layers, within layers, and nobody could help me. There was like maybe one or two friends that I was like texting one word answers and like mentally just trying to claw into the space of like, I don't even know where I'm going. I'm just trying to get the heck out of here. Maybe it's time to go visit my dad and visit my sister. Like it was just like this horrible, wrenching pain just coming out of me. And it was coming out every single day for those 13 days. And then finally, when I completely surrendered, just completely surrendered, just like when I surrendered with ayahuasca, she let go. And I was able to breathe. My heart wasn't beating so fast because can you imagine with the fever for 13 days, how high my heart rate was? Like it was really high. Now, COVID didn't go into my lungs, thank God. It just gave me like a weird cough, but not like parked in my lungs like this one. But what it did do is it really had me physically drained and I had a really terrible stomach pain. I physically was just making these noises because I was in so much physical pain and it started to blend. I didn't know if it was physical, emotional, or psychological. All three of those parts of me were in one space. And I think on retrospect, I thank COVID for that, for me to be in complete coherence. And all three parts of me were listening. All three parts of me were like, okay, what he's saying, like just leave my body. And what COVID was saying to me was, it's time to release. It's time to let go. It's time to know that your dad and your sister love you and that it's okay to cry because I'm like the leader of the family. And so the leader of the family sometimes can't really process death or tragedy like the rest because they're busy leading the family. How can the family know where to go when the leader has to be strong? So, yes, I understand death like probably nobody else in my family, or I can't speak for them. They all handle it very beautifully, but maybe I do handle it different because I do understand what it means to transition a little bit different. And my whole trip to spirituality, I've really put in countless hours. But the reality is, what I've done is I did circumvent my healing. I did cut a big portion of my healing. And that's what COVID was for me. COVID said no. It's physically broke me down, made me pay attention, and made me very awake to the idea of all this emotion needing to come out. And sure, you can say like, oh yeah, if someone's physically not well, that, whatever. But for me, it was a very spiritual experience. It was a very spiritual experience in the sense a huge part of me died. Huge part of me died in the sense of I needed to let go this part of my ego that was not allowing me to process the loss of my dad, to process the loss of my sister because I was so strong. But you know what? I wasn't that strong. I was so weak, and that's okay. When I accepted my weakness and when I accepted my vulnerabilities and when I understood that I'm human living a human experience with a lot of knowledge, and that's okay to have that knowledge. I didn't have to take that knowledge and circumvent my feelings and understanding how beautiful death can be and how, where my dad is in a good place and where my sister is in a good place. Now I'm human, I'm mad, and they left, you know, and I was like broken. And when COVID took me through that journey of like, hey, we got these emotions that need to be released right now. And she was very loving about it, but it beat my body. I was able to heal that part of me. And now I'm on the mend and I'm working on getting my body physically where it needs to go now. I'm just giving myself love, patience, and time. Now, I hope this podcast makes some sense to you guys. If it doesn't, I do apologize in advance. And for you guys watching the video, I just want to thank you again for those who are sending me prayers and love and just positive vibes. Thank you for everything that you did. Thank you for your constant prayers now. And thank you for your patience in this whole journey with me on experiencing what I did with COVID. And thanks for having open ears. All right. Much love, guys. Take care.